Hey, it's all about quality, not about quantity. Right? Let's get back to another round of Brewsday Tuesday with DreZ and Big Nate.
Poppin' Taps on a Brewsday Tuesday, brought to you by the Cellar Restaurant and Six Pack Store in downtown Blacksburg. Well, we are drinking pumpkin beers here today. Nate, did you know a fun fact? Insert fun fact about pumpkins now.
Okay.
No, actually, I did. I wanted to start off by saying, remember how I said if Nate gives a 4.25, that means that the beer is probably a 3.25? Is that what I said? That beer is maybe a 3, honestly, man. And which is a shame because Fat Orange Cat usually is delicious. But I think the problem is I'm not a coffee drinker, and that was more heavy on the coffee than the pumpkin. I think
Pumpkin was subtle.
that's fair to say on that one. So
If you like coffee and you like pumpkin and cold beverage, you're gonna like it.
fair enough. I don't. So it is what it is. Now, this one I do know, granted, I haven't had this year's yet for either of these, but these ones are staples for me. From Southern Tier, you can't talk pumpkin beers without the Pum King. I have the Imperial Pumpkin Ale, 8.6%, and it says Best by 6/4/26. So this must have, is that a 2-year shelf life? Do you think this was brewed on back all the way back in
I would, yeah,
June?
probably. That would, I mean, it would be weird for it to be just shy of 2 years. Yeah.
Is yours similar?
Yeah, it's 6/17/26.
Hmm.
What is LKW?
LKW. Yeah, I see that on there. LKW
There's a stretch of the
24156.
24. I've got 24169. Do you think this was possibly brewed September 16th?
Or would it be 24 being the year, 15 being the day, and 6 being the month? No. I don't know. Because you know how like over in the UK they do they do it
year.
no.
It's
Day, year, day, month, year. It's as it keeps getting like the bigger, which honestly that makes sense. But
no,
we do it differently for some reason.
The reasoning's absolutely there. But
do you know the reason of why we do it the way we do?
Probably stubbornness. I genuinely
I'm
don't.
sure that's what it is.
I genuinely don't. I've often wondered. If you want a fun fact about pumpkins, though, a large percentage of the pumpkin in your pumpkin pie is actually just regular squash.
Mm-hmm. And most beers
That
don't
too.
use actual pumpkin. They use squash yams, I think.
Yep. Which, I mean, it's. Have you ever boiled down a pumpkin?
It probably wouldn't taste as good.
Takes a
Yams
long
are
time.
much tastier. All right, let me see. Does it say on here? Does it actually all brewed with pumpkin and natural flavor added? So maybe they are using actual pumpkin in the pumpkin. What about yours? Does yours say that?
I don't even think I gave the beer. I've got the Warlock. It's the Imperial Pumpkin Stout, 8.6 ABV. But yeah, mine says ale brewed with pumpkin and natural flavor added. So
and yours is the Warlock, also Southern Tier.
Yes, yeah. And it's got a little slogan up here. It says "Rule on, Warlock."
And without looking, Southern Tier is out of.
Was I not supposed to look? Because I was already looking.
Okay, that's fine.
It's Lakewood, New York.
All right, you definitely cheated on that one. That's fine. I looked too. I thought it was New York. I couldn't remember where.
Because I love, like, I'm a sucker for any like Halloween related gimmick, and I love what they've done with the with this cool little Warlock guy on here. It looks like a video game character, and a big fan of it. But he happens to be on the side with Southern Tier Brewing Company, Lakewood, New York, USA, stbcbeer.com. You had to have known I was going to look at the label.
You are a label whore. Well, no, you're a 5 whore. You're a label lover. And in fact, I appreciate, because you catch a lot of stuff on labels that I don't, I really don't appreciate the labels as much as you probably do. I should get lost in the labels more often.
That was always, I mean, it goes back, and I think it comes from my like love for music. But you know,
And the
even
artwork and
like I would sit there and I would listen to a CD and really like dig into the artwork. Or cassettes weren't as fun because usually like sometimes you'd have that fold up insert, but usually it was just that like one little piece of paper. So I always felt like I was getting robbed if I got a cassette instead of like the CD.
see, and back then you probably weren't even messing with albums, but that would have been the money. The
Yeah.
actual proper huge album, especially the ones that open up and you got more on the inside.
But I would sit there and like one that I really vividly remember, Kiss, when they reunited with Psycho Circus. It was all like circus themed naturally, but they had this really cool like lithographic label that like one side, if you tilted it, you would get the band in front of a circus tent, and then the other way you just got this like really creepy demonic clown. And then like they had packaged all kinds of like hints and stuff in there for this game they were selling on the PlayStation at the time. It was Kiss Pinball, which was wild.
So they made, because I know there actually
got
there
the
is
machine,
Kiss
yeah.
pinball machines, but so there was a PlayStation version of that.
Uh-huh.
I see. I never had a PlayStation growing up. Otherwise, I might have owned that
Yeah,
because I love pinball. Kiss, they're all right, but you know, you put the two together.
that one was also really cool though because of course you'd get Kiss music in the game, but it also was one of the first games to have the ability to you could take the disc out and put another CD in there and still play the game while listening to this other CD. So like they flat
Really?
out gave you the option. Yeah, it was
How did that work?
technologically amazing.
It's
Just the
some-
onboard computer, and it wasn't like a horribly complex game graphics or processing wise because you're basically just playing pinball. So it would load that section of the disc and then just run it off of the memory card. At least that's for the PlayStation. I don't know.
Okay.
Obviously, the Nintendo 64 probably didn't have anything similar because
Yeah, yeah. I don't
in the
remember.
States no CD attachment.
But along those lines, so I was more of a Super Nintendo. I guess it was more PlayStation versus N64. Super Nintendo predated this. It was a whole nother version. You think those came out about the same time, I guess, right? 64 and PlayStation.
Yeah, because the PlayStation started as a collaboration with Sony and Philips and Nintendo, and they actually got them in Japan. There's a attachment for the Nintendo 64 that plugs into that base at the bottom that will run CDs. Nintendo kind of scrapped that, moved towards working on the GameCube, which, by the way, one of my all-time favorite systems. I
Yeah.
definitely align more towards Nintendo. We just had a PlayStation.
Yeah, I'm more of a Nintendo guy, and I've been pondering getting a GameCube because well, I don't know, maybe not now, but for a long time you could get them dirt cheap because that was just one of those. It did not catch on. It had those little discs and everything, but so I have the Super Nintendo is my favorite station console of all time, and I have the Super Game Boy, so I could play my normal Game Boy games on the Super Nintendo. However, I got a Game Boy Advance and I bought some Game Boy Advance games. That's how I got to play Crazy Taxi because I didn't have a PlayStation. So, but they did have Crazy Taxi for Game Boy Advance. But, you know, you obviously can't play Game Boy Advance games on the Super or the 64, but the GameCube had an adapter where you can do that. And I'm like, man, should I buy a GameCube? Basically, strictly so that I could play because I don't want to start buying a bunch of GameCube games, and so I never did it.
I mean, this is a conversation that I'm still frustrated with years later. I wish I had had more foresight as a kid. My stepbrother and I, we had every Nintendo system growing up. The classic NES, we had the Super Nintendo, the 64, the GameCube. But of course, what you do is you want the newest and greatest things. So
Funko Land.
Yep. And you trade them in, and I strongly regret some of the peripherals that we had that
100%.
probably would fetch some fantastic money now, and just as
So
impulse control goes when you're young.
I know
Screwed
all
ourselves
too
over.
well. I too was a victim of Funko Land. I traded in my entire Super Nintendo system, all of the games. Now, in hindsight, I mean, yeah, that was a bad deal. I mean, it was terrible. But I did get probably my all-time favorite N64 game. So I traded all that stuff in for a copy of Mario Party, which was great. And one of those like thicker controllers, or the super pad or whatever it was. So terrible deal. And I've since gone back, got another Super Nintendo, and rebought all of the games, which cost a whole lot more than one copy of Mario Party and a Super Pad controller for the 64. I can guarantee you that.
So Nintendo's tried to get some mileage off that nostalgia and the things we miss, and they've made some missteps in recent years. My all-time favorite 64 game is Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time.
Of course.
And they did like a Zelda Super Pack where they ported a couple of games to the Nintendo Switch. And it's just absolutely, maybe it's just I was so conditioned on the Nintendo 64 controller.
Well, that's the
but
problem.
It becomes so impossible to play on the Switch controller. I was like, this has more buttons. How the hell is this possible?
Yeah. Yeah, you can't do that. You got to play it for the system it was intended for. I mean, and I'm sure that they have probably some type of way to fashion something to make it the proper controller.
They kind of learned from that though. What they did with Link's Awakening is completely remastered it, really dug in, redesigned it, and that's one of my favorite games to play on the Switch is Link's Awakening.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about that, but the newest system I have is a 64, and I'm gonna keep it that way, I believe, because ain't nobody got time for that, man. People spend and they get sucked in and spend so much time gaming, and yeah,
It can become a real money pit, and now they've moved to a lot of things are you have to subscribe to play, you have to pay to play, and that's not fair.
no, shouldn't be that way.
Buy the game, I should get the whole game.
But honestly, I meant to mention this. I should have before we delved off. Getting back to the Kiss and having the music on it, I remembered loving Revolution X for Super with Aerosmith, the Aerosmith soundtrack. I mean, that game, even the game was pretty fun,
Yeah.
but it was pretty badass when you got to, you get to the part where the band's like playing or whatever. Oh, and of course, we can't forget Beavis and Butthead. The whole point of that game was to get to the Guar concert, which is just phenomenal.
Oh, it's brilliant concept. Another one I liked a lot that I wish they did more as a franchise now is The Simpsons. They had that the arcade game, of course, being ported to Super Nintendo.
You talking about? So there was the Rampage that was a knockoff of Crazy Taxi.
Rampage was great. That's where I'm going.
I
for
did
They
like that
started
one.
with like the arcade game. Do you remember where you could pick? You were either Bart, Lisa, Homer.
Mm-hmm.
Like Marge's weapon was a vacuum cleaner. They had ported that to the Super Nintendo and I think the Sega Genesis, and then Rampage, of course, mimicking Crazy Taxi, but they also Road Rage. Did you play that one?
Yes,
Because that's the one that mimics Grand Theft Auto.
I
One of
have
the most fun I've ever had.
Road Rage, another sleeper in the Simpsons one that maybe some people overlook. I have it for Super Nintendo, the Itchy and Scratchy game. Did you ever play that?
I did.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that one.
It's
It's a tough game. It's actually one of those ones that's like
but
not stressfully, but frustratingly difficult.
they're in like their 39th season. How have we not had a new game since the mid-aughts? Did they just decide to get out of that?
I don't know.
South Park's
good
got
point.
games coming out.
That's true. Oh yeah, we can go down that road. South Park games were great too. Chef's Love Shack, and of course, just the OG South Park where you're throwing pea-covered snowballs and all that. That was great. I feel like there was another one too. The race.
Yep.
Or what was it? Rally? What was it called? South Park Rally, right?
Yeah, everyone tried to mimic the success of Mario Kart too. That was another interesting.
Diddy Kong Racing. That was. I hated Diddy Kong.
Yeah, I actually
I mean,
preferred Diddy Kong Racing. 'Cause you could
no,
fly the planes. I got
no.
real good at that.
Mario Kart's the OG, and yeah, you got to just stick with that. Of course, there's been 10 of them since, I'm sure, and it's always so funny. Like I was playing, like I had Mario Kart for Super, and my cousin was over. He's younger. He's got it, on the Wii or whatever it is. So as we're playing, he keeps like moving the controller
It's not working.
because that's how you turn, I guess, in the newer games. You turn the controller with the turns.
You know, which is something I used to make fun of my mother for doing, because she would sometimes like sit down and play Mario Kart, and I used to make fun of her. I was like, the controller doesn't have this, doesn't work.
Now they do. Right?
Yeah, she was right.
Yep.
She was a
She was
pioneer.
ahead of her time, that one. It is Brewsday Tuesday. Somehow we're talking about video games, but really we're drinking pumpkin beers. The Southern Tier staples that is the Pumpkin and the Warlock. They're delicious. I'm going to go ahead and untap mine now. Did I say 8.6%? It is an Imperial Pumpkin beer. And it is Pumpkin, Pumking, by the way. And this is one of the top pumpkin beers. I think there's maybe one or two other ones I really like, and we didn't get to it. I didn't see it, actually. I hope they're still making it. The Heavy Seas has like a
Atomic Pumpkin? No.
No, it's got a
I know what you're talking about, because I can.
it's a bourbon. It's like a
Yeah.
bourbon barrel aged one. I'm trying to remember what it's called. I feel like it's been a few years since I've seen it. Maybe they don't do it anymore. But that one's probably my top pumpkin beer. This one's not so far behind. There's actually a couple versions of that, but this one is quite good. If you have to drink a pumpkin beer, either of these Southern Tier ones I think are a good one to grab. And this year's is not disappointing. It's got the high BV. The pumpkin spice and smell on it is great. The nose is fantastic. There's not a lot of lacing to it, but maybe that's just how pumpkin beers are. I don't know. I'm going to give it a 4.5. This is a good one.
I like the Warlock. I've had it before. So far, I'm still gonna have to go with that pumpkin spice latte as my favorite of the day. But the Warlock's always a staple, and it seems like I mean, they know what they're doing. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a 4 on the nose. It's delicious. If you like imperial stouts and if you like pumpkin, you're gonna want more than one of these. But
You're good with just one or a half in this case, because then you'll grab the Pumpkin over here. All right. Well, that's a wrap on Brewsday Tuesday. Next week, have you talked with your guy? Is that happening or not?
He's waiting to confirm.
Waiting to confirm.
I'm gonna blame the feds.
If it doesn't happen, I have a couple options for us. We can discuss it now. We could throw up maybe a can't you do polls online? I don't know. Because I do have one show that I've been sitting on a long time, and it's not beer, but it could be interesting.
I know. I think exactly what it is.
And then of course, I have a couple beer shows in my back pocket as well. So I don't know. I guess we'll wait and see what Dude Man says. We need to do the not beer one at some point.
Yes.
Or maybe not.
But
I don't know. I mean, well, yeah, we got to do it at some point, but the other one's already cold and taking up space in my fridge.
That
so
also
maybe
is a factor.
So maybe we'll do that. Either way, we'll be drinking something
We
next
just need
week.
to do like a big bash, just one really long Brewsday Tuesday.
That might happen in the not so distant future, because I also have another show that I've been saving for a very special occasion, which may very well be sooner rather than later. So enough teasing. We'll figure it out. We'll let you know. It's Brewsday Tuesday. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to take a quick break and we'll get back with the tunes. It'll be just tunes. JT's up next right here on 105.3 The Bear. Stick around.